Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the break. I'm Dawn Kalea, editor of Report on Business magazine, and I'm pleased to be moderating our next panel. Before we get started, though, we have another Best Executive Winner Spotlight video. Let's take a look.
The very foundations of Lattice have not been built on how traditional businesses are built. So the company actually exploded from its nascent stage, right? We started in 2019 and from 2 founders to over 70 people today. So we knew from the very beginning that the way the hierarchical structures are built, it's not going to work because we expanded from one office in Canada to across geographies in Canada, US, Latin America, and even in Europe today. If they have any questions or if they, I would say, more inspired by Tesla and Elon Musk, they don't have to go through the hierarchical structure that has been in place. Those structures are in place more for escalation than anything else. If they need help, they can come and get in touch with anyone in any department. So if there is a new project in place, they can pull people from the compliance side, they can pull people from safety side, they can pull people from the finance and accounting side. All of a sudden, a cluster will be formed. The cluster will work for the common cause and common goal. Once that goal is achieved, the cluster will just vanish. And that's how the whole org structure of Lattice works today. %90 of M&As fail right now. That's the official statistics in M&As. So our M&A strategy has been built based on the learnings of so many years of failure. My CEO, Glenn Lynch, I have seen acquisitions failed. So one thing was very clear for us that we cannot afford any failed acquisition. So all the acquisitions we did, we had 2 fundamental rules. We need to preserve the tribal knowledge of that acquisition. When we acquire a company, the target company, the leaders, the employees of the target company, there is a reason we are acquiring a company. They have been successful in doing things the way they have done. We don't want to destroy those tribal knowledge. We want to welcome them, cherish them, and use it to scale the company, the combined entity, Lattice and the target company. And the second thing is whenever we acquire a company, we go to them, we shake hands, and we say, thank you for having Lattice be part of your family. We have done 12 acquisitions. We have 100% leadership retention across all the acquisitions. And it shows a message that, we have been successful in what we are doing. There's always three key elements: people, technology, and processes. We train our people, we integrate the technologies, and what we do is we build processes around it. And I think those are the crux, I would say, behind change management within the Lattice. It sounds very mechanical, but it always works. You look at any controls, I would say, challenges which management face, or any disruption that has to be done within the organization, there's always 3 dependencies: people, process, and technologies. And once we integrate them, I think once we integrate these 3 aspects with the matrix, and that's how we achieve the change management within organizations.
That was great, thank you. Hopefully by now you've seen the May issue of the magazine featuring our best executives list. They're scattered around the room. It's a stellar lineup of business leaders, and on behalf of Report on Business magazine, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who nominated an exec, and congrats to all the winners. Yes, indeed. Sorry, I feel like I'm being interrogated. What really stood out when we reviewed all the entries is how adaptable these executives have been and how quickly they respond to change. And speaking of change, our next panel will zero in on what lies ahead in the business realm and their top priorities to help their companies thrive in the new economy. This panel is, of course, comprised of best execs from this issue. So first, I'd like to introduce Shazia Zeb-Sobani, Vice President of Customer Network Implementation with TELUS Communications. Next, we have Siring Yankee, Head of Real Estate Finance and Development with Dream Unlimited. Also joining us is Melissa Carvalho, Vice President in the GCS Planning Office and Customer and Enterprise Identity and Access Management with RBC. That's a mouthful. Last but not least, we have Linda Lupini, Global Vice President of Employee Experience with Copperleaf. Hi, everybody. So let's get started. You all work in different sort of silos within your companies, HR, operations, finance, tech. I'd love to hear from each one of you the top issue or two you're currently preoccupied with moving forward. Shazia, why don't we start with you? You're in operations.
Yeah, thank you. I think if anything that was challenged, it was operations through the pandemic, right? So pandemic has taught us a number of things, and the biggest one there was that when you're a cook in the kitchen, which all operation executives and teams are, you're looking for ingredients, and then ingredients can be found locally, and some of them actually come internationally. And whenever I think of operations, it is like painting the house, where you need the right paint, the brush, but you need the painter at the same time as well. And if any of those things arrive before or after, when the rest of the resources are there, then your productivity is challenged and your results are impacted. And that's what we saw in operations through the pandemic. The biggest challenge, which all of us experienced, was supply chain issues. Right, so the product that everybody wanted to get, it wasn't available. When it was available, we were just trying to grab it. So it was coming in bits and pieces. My job is all construction, right? I build networks. Just imagine that when you have a hydrovac truck, but you don't have a conduit. You have the conduit, but you don't have the cable. And I have the best story from pandemic on cable, because we were, I won't take the credit myself, but my team was smart enough to diversify our vendor base, and we've been buying from North America and from Asia. So there was a specific type of cable that we are trying to procure because we were accelerating our indigenous and rural connectivity. We couldn't get the cable. The price of that one cable reel was 8,000 Canadian dollars. To fly it from Japan, it cost us $47,000. So that's kind of one of my favorite stories from pandemic. So supply chain issues was one. Second was compromised productivity. When you're not getting all the material at the time when you need, you're really compromising that what you can get out of the workforce, which is already been constrained and challenged through COVID protocols, at how many people can ride in the truck at the same time, what distance do they need to maintain, and there were certain jobs that can only be done in a buddy environment, in a partnership environment. And the last of all was the availability of resources, right? As we all started to think about life, as we all started to think about what really matters, we saw that out in the field, people were making decisions differently around their availability. So it has been a crazy ride, and I have to say it hasn't ended. But we are becoming a little bit more smarter. We are becoming a little bit more, I would say, sophisticated with our planning, because with supply ops, you have to place order now 2 years ahead of time.
Right.
Yeah, so it has been, as I said, crazy, but at the same time, exciting.
Right. Siring, let's go to you next. You work in finance at Dream Unlimited. What are you looking ahead at?
First of all, I just wanted to commend the Globe and Mail team that despite the pandemic, the logistics and everything was fantastic, because I almost forgot as to how it was to plan to attend an event. So thank you very much for that. So I do have to commend everyone. For us, we are a real estate company, so an impact-driven company, and I think during the pandemic, it was, I think throughout the panel, everyone spoke, it was really a moment for us to pause. It really gave us a pause because it was an inflection moment, because we've been in the business for 25 years, building better communities across Canada, US, and Europe, and it was a moment when we really realized the intersection of real estate with social justice, with climate change, social determinants of health. And it was a moment of reckoning, saying, what do we choose to do? from then on, as we recognize as to what the issues were that lay in front. And for us, really, our main component was we repositioned ourselves as the first publicly listed impact-driven company, Dream Impact Trust, started our Dream Impact Fund, really focused on the three verticals of affordability, sustainability, and inclusivity were the three verticals. And that has really been a key component of how we are building and addressing affordable housing with climate change, with inclusivity, and dealing with all the issues that all the sectors are addressing with supply chain as well as talent. So really on the focus of how we pivot in terms of, as a private entity, how we integrate all these aspects into our business as we make decisions, we release our Dream Impact Management System. So really it was at the moment of crisis and all these issues was a moment of pause, reflection, and opportunities about what we chose to be and who we choose to be as a business.
Melissa, you work in tech at RBC and cybersecurity. What's your top preoccupation these days?
So I think I have the longest title in the world, but really it's just cybersecurity. And so when you think about cybersecurity, what happened to us during the pandemic was we virtualized what I think was in minutes. I recall just never leaving the bed, just constantly hitting approve to virtualize our workforce. We had our customers who moved to digital transformation faster than ever before. And when you think about our customers, it was the restaurant down the street, it was the grocery store, people that never really thought about offering virtual services. And then you think about the cybersecurity incidents that happened to them. And then technology just exploded. And so our attack surface grew bigger and bigger. But the things that keep me up at night and the things that I look forward to in the future is our talent, our people, because we have a shortage of cyber talent. I think a study in 2021 said it's 65% below where we need to be. And so we need to think outside of the box. We need to ensure that our teams are happier, healthier. The stronger teams make for better teams. Diversity and inclusion is really important to us. And I'll talk a little bit further about that, but all the solutions that we offer, if we don't think about diversity and inclusion, we have more ability to have issues and vulnerabilities.
Right. Linda, how about you at Copperleaf?
Yes, thank you. I echo some of what's been said, and thanks to the Globe and Mail as well. It's been really a great event. Well, Copperleaf is a decision analytics software organization. So we manage about $2.6 trillion worth of critical assets around the world, 17 countries. We've always had a distributed workforce, but the bulk of our employees are in Vancouver, and we had a building and a facility and so on. So of course, with the pandemic, everybody goes home, and instantly you have a virtual workforce in a place where people are used to being together. I think, my own view of the pandemic is it was really in some ways an opportunity or a catalyst for what I think we're seeing in the future. It was sort of underlying everything anyway, in terms of mental health, in terms of diversity and inclusion, certainly in terms of flexibility. One of the key things we have to look at going forward in building a workforce. So we did our kind of everybody work at home. We started to really look at our mental health benefits. We improved our benefits. We improved flexible benefits because we have an interesting demographic. We have kind of our boomer generation in some leadership roles, but we have the bulk of the organization very young people. I call them young based on my age. We did notice a difference. People living alone in the pandemic who were, 25, 26, 28 years old, that was a different experience than many people who were living in a family environment. So we looked very carefully at what we needed to do to keep our workforce motivated, and that's on the employee experience side. Of course, in terms of customer implementations of software, we actually did virtual implementations of software for the first time ever. We never imagined we could. We ended up having a historic year in terms of our success, and just recently completed a very successful IPO. So it was a moment of crisis, which is always a moment, I think, of opportunity. So we've done a whole lot of work on some of these other topics around mental health, diversity and inclusion, ESG, and a few other things we may get into here. But I think Most importantly, we looked at everybody as a whole person. They're not just a software coder, an HR business partner, an IT person. They have their own context in which they're living, and they're bringing some of those issues to what they're doing every day with work. So we tried to focus on making sure we met people's needs across the organization.
So when we spoke earlier in preparation for this panel, you all mentioned in one form or another the war for talent. So I'd like for each of you to maybe give us your take on that and how it's impacting your company and your sort of department. Shazia, do you want to
maybe
start?
I'll kick it off. I think war for talent is a reality for all businesses now. And when we really think about it, what's really driving it, we need to think about that what we have gone through, right? First of all, flexible working environment and work style is now a reality and is now an essential that everybody is looking for, right? So at TELUS, we actually started offering work style 10 years ago, which made it our competitive advantage, not anymore, right? Because everybody can now offer remote working. I think we are now exploring that what is the new definition of remote working. If I can work for a Toronto-based company sitting in Calgary, can I not work for the same company sitting in Mexico, right? I know there are tax implications and there are other implications, but I think that that's where the team member minds are going. Right, that's one. The second is that team members are looking for better control of their experience at work. When I look at what our journey has been, and I'm going to take you back to Industrial Revolution, we used to pay employees for output. The reward was output-based. Then we progressed towards time-based reward. You come to the office at 9 o'clock, you leave at 5 o'clock. I think we are now moving towards output-based reward again. It's just that output is not going to be the physical widget. It's really going to be whatever you're doing at work, and it can be measured, and especially the digital transformation that has been propelled through pandemic, that's going to allow team members to demand for better control over their work environment. Whether they deliver on that task during those traditional working hours, or they do it over the weekend, or they do it during the night, I think the organizations will have to think that what does the flexible working hours look like? We have heard from our team members 4-day week. Right? Again, if we think about the output-based environment, output-based rewards, then the definition of time will have to be redefined.
Right.
So I think those are some of the things that are on top of mind for us at TELUS, and we are actively looking towards finding answers for those.
Right.
I think for us a dream, I'm sure most companies, when the pandemic started, first we said, okay, work from home, go to work, and it just kept flip-flopping. After a while, we said, okay, no more policies, and we still don't have a policy as yet, because we are like, okay, you can't keep changing our policies all the time, but really kept it flexible, but also kept it more, instead of a top-down, at each managerial level. Because I think every different function has a different way of acting, behaving, and forming, so really allowing them and providing that agency going further down to each managerial level as to how they would form and how they would work. But again, we do keep it pretty flexible just in terms of how team members engage. I thought what was pretty phenomenal, during the pandemic, we did keep our offices open because we have a very, very young workforce. And the office, for many, became a space where they could come beyond their 400 square foot office spaces. Somewhere they could come and just be able to go to the cafe where we have the cafe and really be there. So I thought that office almost took on a different role where it became a safe space. Right. But what I recognize just in terms of with the pandemic and on the changing landscape is that we all recognize our fragility just in terms of who we are. And we really started recalibrating our own lives. I started recalibrating, so I think all of us started recalibrating on what is valuable, what is priority, and how we choose to do. And I think for us as a company and an organization, organizational purpose really has taken a very different lens on the war of talent as to what is your organizational purpose and the type of talent that we want to bring forth to us. One is in terms of just recruiting and saying, here's the organizational talent, but how you retain is whether that purpose is really seeped into every action, every decision, and the culture of the organization. And that, I think, is to be very mindful about, how it's not just about recruitment, but the retention of it that we don't speak about often. And I think that is the longevity of what we will see as the years come through. But really, I think it's a recalibration that individuals, but also organizations have to take, and that will really help us to benefit us to how we recruit, but also retain our talent.
Right. Melissa?
So in cybersecurity, talent is slightly different in the sense that it can mean from the board of directors to our customers. So all of you here are part of my bench, my talent. You help contribute to cybersecurity. I like to think of it as retention of talent. And so we used to always be hybrid, which was a couple of days a week, maybe sometimes 4, sometimes 3 days a week in the office. Now we move to flexible working. We focus on moments that matter. And so take an opportunity. I'm very grateful for the Globe and Mail for this opportunity, because I have a number of members of my team here. We're going to go out, do dinner tonight. And we take those moments that matter to us to just get together and come together in those moments. I also think about things that we have to think differently when we're hiring people. So I have my teaching degree. That's what I graduated from. I want to go into teachers college to be a teacher. And I'm managing a cyber practice of over 250 people across the globe today. We need to think about it differently. Neurodivergent talent, as Thomas mentioned earlier today. Think about people in marketing, education, to help educate our customers. Just a different way of thinking when we think about talent.
Right. Linda?
Yes. Well, I think, the war on talent is really, for me, about attracting really good people and offering flexibility and offering an environment and an experience that they really want and they feel entitled to have as a result of just experiencing the flexibility through the pandemic. I think, at least with knowledge workers in our organization, you have to give them a really good reason and good data and good evidence as to why they have to come into a building or work between certain hours. So the idea that everything is results driven and it's all about deliverables is just permeates everything. I think retention as well. I mean, we've had very low retention issues, but the ones we've had are really related to people wanting to go out and do passion projects for the most part. And this is also, what I think a lot of people went through during the pandemic. Something I never thought could happen has happened. So what does that mean? It means I should do what I really want to do in my life. So there is some of that, but I think overall, if you're not committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, you'll never meet your recruitment goals, never. And these two things are inextricably linked. So we do a lot of work. We have mandatory unconscious bias training. We do a lot of work in diversity, equity, inclusion. We have employee panels where people talk about being neurodiverse or having disabilities. It's a very open conversation. And we make sure that our candidate pools are diverse pools. Because again, one of the comments people make around, well, we want to hire diverse, but, there wasn't a qualified person. You have to make sure your candidate pools are also diverse, and you have to do it through partnerships. So we've done partnerships for people on the autism spectrum who we've just hired. We do partnerships with Digital Lift, which gives internships to Indigenous people transitioning back into the workforce, partnerships with the Black professionals in tech society, all kinds of things like that. And once you start those partnerships and you bring your talent pool together, you have the opportunity to meet your goals. So I think they're very much connected.
Right. Melissa, all three of the rest of the panelists here, we all talked about DEI initiatives, and Melissa, you have a very interesting sort of perspective on that.
I do, because it's not only a matter of the teams that you hire, but it's the solutions that we deliver. So I was talking to the panel earlier about a news article I read in the UK where they issued biometric passports. And so when you think about something like biometric passports, security entering a country, very important. Well, it didn't work for people of color, primarily women of color. And so when you think about a solution like that, you think, who's the team who built it? How did they test it? What went into that? And then you think about the bad actors and how they could exploit a vulnerability of getting into a country like the UK with passports like that.
Interesting.
Or if you take a different spin on it, and just in Ontario, you think about about the vaccine passports and getting a vaccine. When you think about diversity and inclusion, what about socioeconomic status? How are people who didn't have access to tech, how did people who didn't necessarily have the health card, how did they get that? And so you think about two sides of that. You think about, are we really providing solutions to everyone? And are we building it for everyone? And what do bad actors do to exploit those situations? So there's a lot to think about, not only in our hiring, but then in the solutions that we offer.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Searing, as a real estate company, you have some interesting perspectives around diversity and inclusion, I think.
No, absolutely. I think that for our company, of course, 51% of our board is women. Like, there's gender diversity. We've been that for a long time, around 49 to 50% of our management team, because that's really the next level that we really want to bring about. Again, it will be our women. And I think a key component has been, I think with inclusion comes diversity. With inclusion, it's not just in terms of gender orientation, but also in perspective as well as lived experience as to how we allow for that, because that really allows for inclusion. And for us, of course, partnership with different organizations, but we've really gone beyond recognizing our purchasing power as a real estate company. We have released our social procurement strategy, and we've been doing that for a while, but really we wanted to really pronounce it with our commitment, really committing, saying, of course, with our First Nations and dealing with truth and reconciliation, but also with other marginalized groups as to ensuring that through our social procurement strategy, there is creative entrepreneurship. We have a great case and example in our project in Zibi, which is a 35-acre zero-carbon community in Ottawa and Gatineau, where we worked in partnership with DeConti, which is a First Nation, Algonquin-led First Nations construction company, where we really want to go beyond just saying, okay, here is access, but really go beyond and say, what is that creative entrepreneurship that we are creating equity participation as we move forward? So I think it's beyond diversity and inclusion within the company and our organization, but in our thought process, but also in terms of what that economic level that we can really do in terms of investing in inclusion.
And I would imagine that kind of social impact project helps with retention.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Shazia, how about at TELUS?
Yeah, so I think where diversity is a fact, inclusion is a conscious choice we have to make. Right, and at TELUS, we have been acknowledging that for many decades. But to really embed that inclusion into our system, there are a number of things that need to be synchronized at the same time. Right, so you really need to have the commitment at the top, and our CEO personally made the commitment for diverse, and today we have a highly diverse board. It starts from there. At our senior executive level, we have over 30% women in those roles, and when we look at our overall workforce, we again have 1/3 of our workforce which is women. We still have a long way to go to 50%, but we feel that we have the right things in place. I think procedural justice is very important, because when you bring the team members in and when they are part of the family, they really need to be felt to be included and to be heard. So I think it doesn't just finish by inviting the right people, which we also addressed very seriously by writing gender neutral postings. Right, so we are a technology company, and a number of our jobs have been traditionally stereotyped with a male team member or with a male profile. So we had to actually put in a lot of effort writing the job posting so it would appeal both to male and male. Then we made sure that we have a diverse and a balanced interview panel. So we have both the diversity of gender and the diversity of thought and ethnic diversity on our interview panel. So because we know that we all look for different things when we are trying to look for the right talent. And then we have an extremely robust onboarding process so that the team members feel included. We regularly run, which we call listening circles, inviting the team members and asking them about their experiencing and then building further upon those experiences. We have a number of resource groups. There is resource group for women, there is resource group for Indigenous, resource group for Blacks, and resource groups for other other ethnic groups as well, so that people can associate themselves with others who at least look like them, right? And get the support and can feel that there is a safe place for them to share their experiences. So we take it very seriously, and we have been on the journey for a number of years, and we still feel there is a lot for us to conquer there.
Right. Another thing by the way, if anybody wants to jump in, feel free to talk over me. The less I have to say, the better for all of you. So obviously, you know, D&I is a big part of sort of environmental, social, and governance investing, I guess. Linda, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about ESG in terms of Copperleaf. I think you had some interesting things to say there.
Yes, sure. So, of course, we're all hearing about ESG, environment, social, and governance. ESG at Copperleaf kind of has two meanings. We have ESG at home because our decision analytics software goes some way toward helping companies look at their own ESG levels, reporting, and data. But we can all see that you know, now there's starting to be a requirement to report on ESG. And I think that whole middle part, social, is about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So sometimes we think about, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion is this movement and workers that work with us. Our colleagues want this. But in fact, everybody wants it. Analysts and investors and shareholders, all kinds of people are saying, well, wait a minute, this is about, you know, more than the financials and more than the bottom line. How do we measure the value you're creating as a company, as an organization? What are you doing to create value in the world? So again, I see it very connected to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this is a kind of a movement or a change or a shift, you might say, across all groups. It's not just about our employees saying we care about this. This is about everybody in the world saying we care about this. And as soon as you have somebody looking at the value you create in an organization beyond the bottom line, there's pressure to do it, which is a good thing, a great thing in terms of social impact. Governance around risk and environment, you know, of course, what we all talk about and what we're all seeing really right now in our daily lives.
Anybody else want to jump in, Siri?
Yeah, I agree with just Linda, just in terms of with the ESG, there's a growing movement and a groundswell really with different organizations across all sectors, I have to say. And for Dream, for us, we have ESG, which is a risk-based, but we have gone beyond by going impact. And impact is really about dealing with what are the positive outcomes that deal with everything, whether it's with the ESG component. So how do we, for us, we say, any asset or any real estate that we are at, we want to make sure that we leave it better, that the people who reside there have a sense of belonging, it's meaningful. So really going beyond that. And I think that with that being said, just looking and ensuring that capital also flows and is being invested into those investments too, and making sure there's a groundswell there. I was just reading McKinsey's report on the net zero transition, where it says that by 2050, again, based on the IPCC's report, I'm sure which everyone has read, which is, you know, code red alert there. But we need around, I think globally, around 275 trillion till 2050 to decarbonize all physical assets. That's 9.2 trillion a year. That's a lot. So we need a lot of private capital moving there.
Right.
You know, maybe I would just add something. For Royal Bank of Canada, it's important, but it's complex. There's a lot of things to consider. It's not just what we do and what our people do, but it's the companies we work with, who we invest in. And so, you know, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And so we have to now think about all those organizations that we partner with and who we invest in and what they're doing as well. So it's a very complex thing to think about.
Yeah. And at TELUS, it's at the core of our strategy, right? So social capitalism actually guides us, not just in the societies, in the communities where we live and serve, but also our overall corporate strategy, right? So our for good programs that go towards different segments, whether it is to help the students to have access to laptops and free internet, whether it's a senior population with a discounted data points, or whether it is mobile health clinic, which is reaching out to those vulnerable Canadians who don't have the direct access to the healthcare or are shy shy to actually go to those clinics. Also, our commitment towards environment has been significantly heightened in the last 5 years. You might have seen for every new handset purchased, we actually plant a tree, and we just completed planting 1 million trees. And we are committed by 2030 to have net zero impact. And our move towards our fiber networks and to turn down our copper networks, which consume so much power and not good for environment, is going to be a huge step towards that.
Well, I mean, climate change is also having a huge impact on TELUS's networks. I mean, your colleague Ibrahim Gideon is also in the list, talking about flooding and heat waves and the impact it has very pragmatically on.
Absolutely. What we experienced, especially in BC last year, was unheard of, right? As we were just kind of putting our last deck together on our learnings from fire, we had to put the next update together for floods. Right? So, and that's going to happen more often, right? And we all need to be collectively ready for it.
Right. I mean, it must be a huge issue for you, Searing, as well at Dream. Just climate change and how you...
Oh, absolutely. For us, we've committed to be net zero by 2035, and I think that we have a net zero roadmap. We've already released it, and it's right now dealing with operational emissions, and we want to go beyond really looking at carbon embodied emissions, which is the more challenging aspect, and really dealing with scope 1, beyond scope 1 and scope 2, but also scope 3, which is often not spoken about pretty often. So I think that it impacts us all because, it's existing assets you got to decarbonize. We know carbon taxes are coming about as how that's going to really impact our P&L, I would say. But also beyond that, with all the new developments that's happening, we want to look at the entire life cycle of, as we deal with supply chain, the life cycle assessment of all the materials, concrete, which is the biggest challenge, as you know, and then with steel, so how we are really addressing and solving those I think those are opportunities for us to innovate, I think.
Yeah. I mean, as an infrastructure sort of tracking company, it must be a huge concern at Copperleaf.
Yeah, so we're managing, our core business is oil and gas, utilities, but now we're in the UK into the water management, and so it's absolutely the core of what we think about. So we have a decision analytics tool that will go through and say, if you want to transition, if you want to invest in a certain way to get a certain outcome, this is what you have to do, and this is the best way to do it, and it'll run scenarios, comparative scenarios. So it's absolutely at the core of what we do. We have something called ESG at Home, which is our own ESG for Copperleaf. But yes, ESG is a key part of our product, which is, of course, in high demand right now.
Right. Speaking of at home, perfect transition. Melissa, I'm wondering about work from home. Obviously, sort of affects each one of you. I would think in a different way. But how has it affected sort of the threat landscape for you?
It's increased the threat landscape for us. So we're not only just our staff and the staff working from home, but if you think about some of our offshore networks, before the way they used to operate was they would walk into a facility, put their mobile phones and their devices at the door, and then they would walk in. Well, now they're working from home. And so we're only as strong as all of those environments that they're in. And so we have to think about them. We have to think about our third parties that we're integrated with. And we integrate with many. When you think about cloud, some of our SaaS implementations, what does their cybersecurity look like, and how do they implement cybersecurity? And so we prep not for preventing incidents, but for when an incident happens. And so we build that muscle reflex in what we do at all levels, from the board to our customers, to really prepare for it, because it happens and we need to be ready.
Right. Searing, what about you? I mean, as a real estate company, work from home has changed the game, I would think, both in office space and residential.
It's a rhetorical question, right? Of course, for us at We own around 5 million square feet of offices and 32 offices across Canada, primarily here in the downtown Toronto. And I think that we're extremely proud because we sold around 140 and really gone down to this 32 core. And prior to the pandemic, we did a lot of renovation already, and we're continuing to do really decarbonizing our asset, part of our sustainability, and making it healthy buildings. And then the pandemic hit, and of course, everyone wants to make sure that we have healthy buildings where the air circulation. So it really worked well for us. And our floor plates are smaller, so it worked well for us because of where we are located and the small size. However, to be honest, we are in the office business too, but recently when we had coming back to the office, we recognized that we were short of space. Because during the pandemic, of course, you had hired a lot, and we didn't assign any seats. So now all of a sudden, when we are doing the head count, we are like, oops, we're short of space. And of course, thankfully, we are in the office business, so we had enough space to take space. But with that being said, I have to say that we don't know like what that impact is going to be to the office industry. But for us, we've kept it flexible. We want to make sure that our team members are encouraged to feel comfortable, and when they can meet with their respective managers as to how they can collaborate with. And of course, we are also developing a lot of our assets, and we need people to be physically going on site visits. So those are the key components that we do have to address, but we don't know as to what the overall impact is, but we're keeping it flexible at the moment.
Right. Shazia, we talked a little bit about sort of changing consumer habits and how that ties in with all of this.
Yeah, so when we think about pandemic, one thing that we all learned very quickly to get educated digitally. So we entered into that digital life. We still have to learn how to live that life a little bit more responsibly, but I think we've entered into that. So what it means is, and what we are seeing with our customers at TELUS is that, one, they want their experiences to be more integrated. They don't want to leave the platform. If you're into a single platform, you want access to all applications through that platform, because moving from one platform to another is a hassle. The second thing that we are learning is that they want their experience to be secure, right? So a number of my colleagues have touched upon that because now that has become your new vehicle for interaction, whether it is to get your digital healthcare, whether it is for education, for entertainment, whether to digitally socialize with your family and friends, right? So they want the experience to be a lot more secure. And the third thing is that they want more control over that experience, right? So when you really think about that, the digital transformation that has been propelled is going to take us towards the consolidation of those platforms. And we are already seeing that out in the industry. And when I talk about our own company, I mean, at TELUS, when you are into TELUS ecosystem, we are designing in a way that our customers don't have to leave it, right? Within the TELUS platform, you can access all streaming services through your cell phone, at home. We are trying to kind of integrate all those services. You can control your house from the same platform. You can regulate your energy usage and whatnot. So I think that is a big shift that we are going to be seeing, that how the customers will be needing a lot more control over their digital experience and how they will be demanding more integration.
Right. Linda, as an HR exec, I'm interested in sort of mental health that has issues that have arisen with work from home. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yes. So mental health is a big issue and became a bigger issue during the pandemic. When you look at some of the neuroscience around being on a video call, Zoom, or whatever platform you're using, there's nothing relaxing about looking at your face and other people's faces, a foot away. It's actually not, it's actually anxiety producing when you look at the neuroscience. Also just things in terms of working memory. You're taking in, all these things, all these cues all the time while you're talking. You're sitting in the same place. You're not getting up and moving around like you would do if you were in a building. And this kind of thing creates what we all call the kind of pandemic fatigue. Why do we feel so tired? You also are missing, of course, the impromptu water cooler coffee conversation, cafeteria conversation. So everything is a formal, scheduled meeting, and it was exhausting. It is exhausting. So we brought in a clinical counselor to talk to our employees and do a whole session on coping mechanisms if you were feeling that pandemic fatigue. I think everybody's familiar with Adam Grant's article on languishing. We all felt it. And then we had employees sit on a panel themselves with some of our senior executives and talk about their own personal issues. Because I think, when you have people in your own employee community talk about things, it becomes open, there's no taboo, and you can really talk about it. But we also had to change our benefits program. So we have, if you're 28, you care about, mental health counseling, massage therapy, all these things. If you're kind of more my age, it's dental care, vision care, and then we had something in the middle. We created all kinds of ways in which people could really talk about it and deal with it. And so it's not as open as it should be anywhere, but we tried hard to create open conversations about it. And again, people were impacted differently. Some people just had high anxiety around a parent or a grandparent getting ill. People lost people. It was pretty hard. So we're continuing a lot of the support we have around mental health.
Right. We just have a couple of minutes left, but if there's any questions from anyone, by the way, feel free to raise a hand right here.
Hello. Thank you for nice presentation. Question for each one of you. In your professional life, what keeps you or wakes you up 2 in the morning?
Yes, a lightning round. What keeps you up or wakes you up in the middle of the night? Shazia?
Yeah, I think for me, it's team. It has always been, right? And I think in the previous panel, we heard about that, how you need to be really flexible with your leadership style, right? So I think I want to make sure that I'm supporting my very diverse team to bring their best self forward and to accept their whole self that they bring to work, right? And it was a lot more evident through COVID because there's no more your professional face and your personal face. We are one human being and we carry the entire baggage with us wherever we go, right? So I think what keeps me up at night and wakes me up in the morning is that, am I being an enabler for them or am I being a roadblock?
Steering?
I think for me too, it's people. I think it's the team, but also it's because we are building a lot of affordable housing. I just want to make sure that nothing gets delayed, that those who are most vulnerable in need of the housing, we are able to deliver. And I think it's really 2 components that keep me awake is, am I doing enough for my team? Am I doing enough for the most vulnerable?
Right.
That we serve, yeah.
For me, it's the team, and it's because the team takes care of all the cyber issues and the incidents, and as a leader, I want to make sure that I'm taking care of the team. So if they have a family member that's sick, they're not feeling well, they have a personal emergency, I want to make sure that we're rerouting some of the stuff so they don't need to worry about that. And so it's worrying about the team because they worry so much about taking care of what they do at work.
Linda?
Yeah, I hate to sound like...
I know.
Mostly I sleep at night, but yeah, I do worry that, especially on an HR team, we are enablers, for other people in the organization to bring their best self to work and to be productive and motivated. And I do have an extraordinary team, but they work very, very hard. And we talk a lot about work-life balance, but sometimes, we're the worst offenders. So I do worry. I worry about everybody at Copperleaf, but I worry more about my people, for sure.
Well, we have to leave it there. Look at this. 5 women on the stage. 5
okay,
sellers. Thank you so much for being here. Please join me, everybody, in thanking Shazia, Searing, Linda, and Melissa for being here. And just before we wrap up and head into the lounge for a drink and some networking, we have a short video featuring another of Canada's best execs. Let's take a look.
So we've implemented a lot of different actions since the pandemic started. First of all, offering our associates access to telehealth and then extending that health to our associates and their families, as well as offering them digital well-being tools across our entire workforce. But more importantly, one of the things we've done is help to educate our leaders around mental health. We've committed to training 1,000 leaders to be mental health first aid certified, and really making sure that all of our associates know how to take better care of themselves and their families. And when it comes to our focus on well-being, it's not just about these tactics and strategies, it's really about creating a movement. So we're really focused on destigmatizing the conversation. Work isn't changing, work has changed. Where we do work, how work gets done, and how we collaborate with each other has all changed throughout the pandemic. But more importantly, our relationship with our work has changed. We expect more from our employers, and we expect a different type of integration between how we work and our lives. And I really welcome this, because I think it allows us to define success more broadly, beyond just professional achievement. It's about how we take care of ourselves and each other. It's about how we give back to our community and how we take care of the planet and really become a regenerative organization. We know that an individual's relationship with their coach, how they feel as part of a team, how included they feel to be their unique self, as well as their connection to a company's purpose, are some of the biggest drivers to engagement. These are all areas that we're focused on at Walmart Canada. Our Live Better strategy means creating opportunity for everyone. And we're committed to being an anti-racist organization. We're committed to creating economic opportunity for women and Black and Indigenous Canadians. We've really seen some amazing progress over the last year in gender parity. We've actually seen female representation increase over the last 2 years, which is something we're really proud of. And we've committed $20 million in the next 5 years to use our size and scale to address systemic barriers that Black and Indigenous Canadians are facing. We've also launched our regeneration strategy, which is making sure that we do more good than harm, and we leave our associates and the planet better off than we found them. These are all things that are driving purpose and engagement throughout the organization, and we're just getting started.
That was excellent. That's it for today. On behalf of the Globe and Mail, I'd like to say thanks again to all of our speakers today, and congrats to our 50 best executives. I'd also like to say thank you to all of you for being here in the room today, and everyone in the virtual audience as well. Same goes for our sponsors for making today's event possible. Thank you again, everyone, and I hope you can stay and enjoy some food and chatting out in the lobby. Thank you.